to our daily Get Together live reading club. My name is Patricia Dietrich. I'm the global head of marketing at getAbstract, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by author, business leader, and coach Jodi Womack. Jodi is the co-founder of the Get Momentum Leadership Academy and the founder of the No More Nylons, a coaching program providing women business leaders with professional networking expertise. Today, we'll talk about her recent speech, Dear Wonder Woman, You Are Not Alone. We'll add the summary in the comments so that you can check it out later. While we wait for a few moments to let people sign on, I'd like to remind you that we're doing these live get-together sessions to bring people together and provide a platform where we can exchange knowledge and ideas to navigate the current pandemic wisely and professionally. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and we'll get to them throughout the conversation. So I think we're ready to get started. Jodi, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Patricia. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you.
I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, and particularly to talk about this speech that you gave recently. It was deeply personal and heartfelt. It was a speech at the U.S. Air Force's most recent leadership conference called Dear Wonder Woman, You Are Not Alone. And there you opened up about a personal hardship. I could relate to this situation very much, and I think that a lot of our viewers will as well. So I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about the story and what inspired you to share it?
Yes, of course. Thanks. So at the time, I was living in Santa Barbara, California, and my parents are in Los Angeles, about 100 miles away. And I would go home to visit. And one time I went home and I gave my dad a great big hug. And then I went over and I gave my mom a hug and my arms went around her. She felt so thin, so frail, so slight. And I said, Mom, would it be okay if I go to your next doctor's appointment with you? She said, yes, of course. And I always joke that I think she said yes just because she liked to have me come visit. But that doctor's appointment led to a specialist and then an x-ray and a scan and more tests and more specialists. And about 8 months into the process, I had a sense, I had a feeling, I knew what was going on. But finally, a neurologist said to my mom, Eileen, you have dementia. And she said, okay. And if you know dementia, that is not the appropriate response. That is, it's devastating. And I knew. And quite frankly, the reason why she was so thin was she was forgetting to eat. So she was literally starving in her own home, being surrounded by people who love her, but didn't realize that this was going on. And it was devastating to me as the kind of daughter I wanted to be. Here I was traveling the world, I was speaking, I was coaching, and yet someone so near and dear to me, someone, my best friend my whole life, my mom, was struggling and feeling, she was diminishing. And it really, it was so painful and so shameful because I couldn't believe that it was happening. And it shifted the kind of person and the kind of daughter I wanted to be. And so I started working with my dad. Our relationship has really changed and grown to be more of a partnership as caregivers for her. He's there every day with her. When I lived in California, I would have my mom come up about a week a month so that I could give my dad a little break and he could travel a little bit and be with friends, and I would take care of my mom. And I also liked really seeing her progression and seeing what things seemed to improve the situation and which things made it worse. And so it was always a learning curve. And right about the same time, my husband got an offer for a job, which was his dream job, but it was across the country. He's now an instructor for the Air Force, but what it meant was I had to choose. Do I choose to stay and live with my husband across the country, or do I stay and choose to be near my parents? And I did choose to be with my husband, and we moved to Montgomery, Alabama to work at so he could work at Air University, which is the Air Force's center for training for their leaders. And for about the last 16 months, I was able to fly back to California once a month, anywhere from 7 to 14 days, and be there and continue that caregiving with my mom. Now with the pandemic, I haven't been able to travel since February, so it's almost 2 months now, and it's changed how I participate, how I help, how I check in. And my folks are older. My dad's in his 80s, and I got to tell you, I'm so proud of him for the way that he's stepped up in caregiving, because he's an older man and he never quite honestly thought he would be a caregiver. But he's also stepped up in learning the new technology. And for example, he has hearing aids and they're connected to his iPhone. And so we're able to use this technology to communicate in a much calmer situation instead of screaming on the phone or through the computer.
And I'm sure it makes them feel more comfortable when you're talking.
Yes, like the stress for everybody, for him, my mom, for me. I'm not repeating myself, feeling I'm going crazy with the two of them. But once I started sharing this story about this whole other life, in addition to my professional life and my personal life with my husband, I started sharing my home life. Other people started telling me about hardships with their parents, or having grown children with disabilities and other hardships that we didn't always seem to share because it didn't seem professional. But now I think with the pandemic, people's private lives are now part of their professional lives. Having to do Zoom meetings and work from home, we do have this insight into people's personal lives that we've never had ever in the history of us and the way that we work. So I find that the more willing I am to share in a professional way, and I hope it doesn't seem crass in the way that it comes across, because I've been sharing this story quite a bit. It's like, it's still so near and dear to my heart. And I called the talk Dear Wonder Woman because my mom was my Wonder Woman. She's beautiful and elegant and humble and just so caring and giving. And having this shift of her stepping down from all of that she used to do for so many, and feeling the desire to take on that baton, like passing the baton from one generation to the next, and trying to figure out how to help with managing caregivers and medicines and doctor's appointments, and doing that from 2,000 miles away in different time zones, and really building that team of support, because nobody should have to do this by themselves.
Right. And I think when I found this story incredibly touching, when I watched the talk, I almost burst into tears because I was so emotional. I could really relate to it. I think a lot of people can as well. But one of the things that I found really most impressive is that you really touch on the fact that you talk about loneliness. Actually, you start the talk saying, it's hard to say that you're alone or that you feel alone. And it's with these hardships that you really sometimes really feel lonely, because you feel like maybe you're the only person going through this, or that you're alone with your hardship. So I thought that was very empowering to be able to say, this is happening. And you talk about how kind of talking about it helped you, and kind of sharing the story, but also how it can maybe help other people as well. And so when you talk about Dear Wonder Woman, and you say your mom was your Wonder Woman, and when you had to take on this role as caretaker, you became also Wonder Woman, and your father is a superhero as well. And suddenly you're talking about like all these superheroes in your life, in your team, and I realized we are all a little bit of a superhero. But I wanted you to expand a little bit on this, and why. What does that mean that we are superheroes, and what kind of powers do we have?
I think the superpowers are hidden skills and talents and gifts that we have that, quite frankly, we probably don't always think of as special because they're so normal to us. And I think they're superpowers because not everybody has them. And for me, I love connecting. I love sharing information, and I truly believe that that's one of my superpower gifts, is that once I find out about something, I like to share it with every single person. And whether I do that by phone calls or text messages or emails, that is a superpower, because, like, for example, my husband, who's also a great connector, he doesn't always have the same intuition that I do about who might need that. He has other things. So one way of realizing a superpower is when you think of doing something and somebody else doesn't. Like, that's a way of saying, oh, that's something that's important to me, and I know I'm good at it. I know I can do it. And taking advantage and really giving that more energy, more attention and time and energy, because that's really what the world needs right now, is for all of us to be enlivened at what we're really, really good at.
That's a great message. Thank you. And we already have a question coming in, and because it's so topical, I wanted to share it right now, because you just shared about how technology helped you and your dad in this situation. And we have a question from Lara, and she asks, what a great topic. She says, so many of us have aging parents that need our help, and the pandemic has changed how we are able to help them. What tips do you have for getting them to use technology to better stay in touch and communicate?
Oh, this is great. Find out what their desires and interests are. A lot of times when I would try and make my dad do something because it made my life easier, he was not interested. But the moment I gave him the tools so that he could talk to his friends and buddies, that was interesting to him. And the other piece is to start small and practice. And for me, it takes a lot of thinking and planning to make things easy for him. So I try, and my dad loves instructions. And as a Swiss person, you probably really appreciate that. I like to just push all the buttons and see what things do. But he likes to know what to do before he does them. So really understanding your people, whether that's kids or parents, putting it in ways that they're going to receive it well and understand it will help them embrace it. If it's just for your benefit and to make your life easy, you're probably not going to get the compliance you would like. But I have been doing FaceTime video. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get all my words right. FaceTime video chats with my dad. And he accidentally pushed a button the other day on a text message and sent an invite to 10 friends on FaceTime. And all of a sudden we had all of his golf buddies and all of his, all these 80-year-old dudes hanging out going, what's happening? Who is this? Why are you here? And then we laughed, and it was so much fun. So the key for me is, like, how do I make this fun for people and that they're willing to play? Older generations tend, or sometimes can be, afraid that they're going to break it. They're going to break the internet. They're going to break the phone if they push a button, because when they were growing up, that happened. For us, it's like we push stuff all the time. If it doesn't work, we uninstall it, reinstall it, turn it on, turn it off. But that's a great question. Like, how do you practice with little things? How do you make it fun? How do you let them see grandkids or pets or something beautiful that they might not have access to where they are? Because
I love this tip.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah. I love this. And I think that it's actually useful for everyone, even with people that you want to stay in touch, right? To try to find a fun way to connect that helps you call someone that maybe you haven't called, or family members that you might not have spoken to in a while. I think that's a great thing. So I wanted to go back to the topic of like building this team that you touched on before, and now you said, for example, your dad, when he made this mistake and a bunch of golfers were suddenly there on the call, and this reminded me that in your talk you talk about building your team, that it's really important, whether you're going through hardships or not, or whether you feel lonely or not, it's important to build a team, a support team for you. And I think in light of the current pandemic, we have probably even more people going through these feelings of loneliness, and kind of, the self-isolation and quarantine is kind of helping these feelings. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on, how do you, if you haven't built that team before and now you're at home, how do you go about building that team now? And even later, when we go back to normal, whatever normal will look like, how do we go about building our superhero team?
Yeah, so important to do this. And the only way to do it is to take the initiative and try. When we first started, I helped my knitting group get online and do Zoom with during their knitting time. And it was a way for these folks, that a lot of them are elder women, to stay connected, again, to practice with the technology, to have the support and girlfriends that would help out. I've also heard and been part of people doing birthday celebrations on Zoom, where everybody gets together with all the family and you sing happy birthday, trying to make normal life normal again. How do we stay in touch? One of the things I have clients do professionally when I'm coaching them is to build Team You. So who's on your team? Who wants to see you succeed? And make that list, because in my experience, when I'm tired, when I'm feeling isolated, when I'm feeling alone, it's the worst time to try and think, who's actually an ally? Who's actually on my side and wants me to do well? Who could I reach out when I'm in this down space? So the key is to make this list when you're up, when you're mentally agile, and when you're thinking well, right? Who do you enjoy professionally? Who can help you financially? Who would be able to answer questions with technology? Think of all the different spokes of your life. If you were the CEO and your life is like a company, and you think of this org chart, right? Like, who's the logistics? Who knows where to get things from the market that aren't being delivered in your neighborhood, right? Like, think of all the different kinds of people that could help you. And then during this time, I've also made a list of who are the people that I want to reach out to, because I haven't heard much from them. They're not on social media. They might be elderly or not tech savvy. Those people, those folks are going to need some love. And maybe it's a phone call. I'm also a huge fan of being pen pals and doing it old-fashioned handwriting, putting a card in the mail. I have a couple of my friends' parents who are in nursing homes that I write with. And I also have a couple kiddos, girlfriends of mine with little children, they're 6, 7, 8, that getting mail is new. They've never received mail in their life. And my friend actually videotaped her daughter, opening an envelope, because she had never done that in her life, a 5-year-old. And it was so cute. And it's a chance to connect. And so what I'm finding is there's no wrong way to do this other than not doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can see, as we do these live chats, you get to see into people's homes, into their home offices, what we wear, what we do when we're not in a suit and tie or, in professional dress. This is a time to really use our humanity to connect to one another.
That is very true. And I think I also think that we have to make the first step. Like you said, it's about also being proactive while you're building the team. It's not just who can I reach out to for this or this, but what superpowers of mine can I use for other people, right? And I love this, that your pen pals and are doing things like this. We have another question coming in, so I want to read it right now. It says, Jodi, you mentioned that publicly sharing parts of your personal life has been helpful for you. Do you have any advice for people who are intimidated by sharing their personal struggles to open more?
That's a great question, because people who share too much, it can also be a detriment. So start with people you trust. Start with if it's a coworker who might be able to help navigate your work at home instructions. People didn't used to talk about personal lives because it muddied the water, but now the water is muddy. We are working from home, and so there's a huge spectrum of people isolated that work and live alone now, to people with many children in homes that, not every kid has a device, and there's Wi-Fi issues, and we're just seeing this huge spectrum of what people are dealing with on a very personal level. So start with people, advisors that you trust. And perhaps you don't start with someone within your company. Perhaps there's so many like teledoc programs now where you can reach out and get online therapy or assistance and advice in that way. But the goal is not to keep it inside. The goal is you don't have to deal with this and figure it all out by yourself. We are smarter together, and building teams of support that truly love you and trust you and want good and wellness for you. That's my hope and goal, is that people, like you said, take initiative, reach out and get the kind of help and support they need, and reach out to the people that they can help and support.
Yeah,
because that feels good
so
too. This time,
yeah. Absolutely. I think it feels equally good to help and to listen to other people as it is to share once you start sharing. And I think for me, one of the best lessons from your talk is actually once you start sharing, you realize you're not alone. For example, you talked about your experience with a support group that you thought like, oh, maybe I'm not worthy of going to a support group because they have other issues, and then you realize, no, actually this is also for me. And I think it's empowering as well to know that you're not alone, and once you start sharing your story, probably other people will want to share their stories as well, and that creates this sense of unity, and it can combat also a little bit that loneliness that we feel. So I think I want to finish up with one question about how can leaders and organizations learn from this right now, or what lessons could they learn, and what can they do during this pandemic to help their employees and their workforce?
This is a huge opportunity to humanize the workspace, to make those people that possibly are quiet or in need right now, to give them a voice and give them support, and to let them lead as well. This whole idea of being vulnerable, I know it sells a lot of books and everybody says it's a great thing. Doing it can be terrifying. And so creating those opportunities where people can share vulnerably, can share honestly, and creating little teams of support, little buddy systems. If we all had a buddy, I think we would all come out of this much stronger and much safer and much more quickly, and really be able to help one another along the way. So that's my hope and goal, is take the initiative and find a buddy. Go help somebody and let somebody help you.
That's a great message, and I for sure at getAbstract will make sure to try that out. And I think it's a good message also to finish our talk. Thank you so much, Jodi, for joining me today. Thank you all for watching. I encourage you to watch Jodi's talk or read the summary. I'd also like to remind you that at getAbstract, our mission is to provide relevant knowledge so that you can make the best decisions for your personal and professional life. To us, this is more important than ever, and that's why we are offering free access to our platform until May 18th. So visit getAbstract.com and sign up for free. So be safe, practice social distancing, but don't forget to reach out to others during this difficult time, and join us tomorrow at the same time for another live get-together. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, Patricia.
Thank you.